This is the most disrespectful statistic I have ever seen in my life. This one surprised me probably the most, and it's the fact that Hikaru Nakamura has been given a 9% chance, a whopping 9% chance to win the Champions Chess Tour Finals. Hi, I'm Levi Rosman, but you might know me as Gotham Chess.
And I'm Daniel Naroditsky. You might know me as the Prophet.
We're here to predict who's going to win the Champions Chess Tour Finals starting December 9th in Toronto.
We'll be in Toronto live to comment the action. The best players in the world have battled all year long for 8 elite spots. Here's our take on their chances to win it all.
Daniel, so Alireza is the youngest ever player to get to 2800, but this year on the tour he struggled in particular against Magnus, and also recently his rating is down like never before, and he's probably not going to be making the FIDE candidates. What do you estimate as his chances to win the Champions Chess Tour Finals?
So 5% sounds very low, Levy, but I actually think that's a pretty legitimate prediction given his results across the time controls since he sort of came back from his break. We have to factor in that he hasn't played chess nearly as regularly as almost everybody else in the field. He struggled in classical, and he's kind of lacked that spark, you know, that excitement in his play, that inspiration, that passion that propelled him to 2800. That's kind of been missing in his latest tournament performances, and I think he needs to bring that back if he wants to, you know, raise eyebrows this year in the CCT finals. And something tells me that he might not have the form to do that just yet.
Personally, I think Alireza is the biggest wild card in the field, Danya. So even if he's had a bad year, even if he's had a bad run, he's out of form, he doesn't have a great record against some of these players, it might actually be to his benefit. He has some pressure off his shoulders now that he doesn't have to go into another candidates and potentially risk it being a disaster. So maybe he does find that fire, walk around Toronto, get inspired, eat some good food, and he does really well. Like, I think he's the most unpredictable player in the field. It could be 5%, it could be negative 5%, it could be 25%. We'll just have to see which Alireza shows up.
So there's no question that Fabiano has had an absolute resurgence. He's been confident, he's been winning so many games, and this is the Fabiano that we saw, you know, score 8 out of 8 in the 2015 Sinquefield Cup. This is the Fabiano that qualified for the World Championship, and we've been tracking the narrative where Fabi has improved exponentially in faster time controls as well. So he's got a lot going for him. With that said, I still think Fabiano has a lot to prove in the rapid time control. I think 18% is right about on the dot. He needs a lot of things to go right for him. He needs to do well against Magnus. But if Fabi can continue his form and channel that confidence, I think he's got a great shot, Levy.
So I have a problem with several things that you just said. Number one, in 2015, Fabiano Caruana went 1 win and 3 losses in the Sinquefield Cup. So I certainly hope that Fabiano Caruana does not show up if he wants a chance to win. I believe it was 2014. 2014 when he won his first 7 games, including one against Magnus Carlsen. But yes, you're 100% right in the fact that he is back over 2800. He's had a bit of a resurgence, number 2 in the world once again. And basically anytime he's now a member of a tournament, you might hypothesize that he's going to win it. But I also strongly disagree with this conclusion that he has double the statistical chances, which we will get to later, of that Hikaru has of winning the Champions Chess Tour Finals. I find that kind of hard to believe, because I am of the opinion that Hikaru is the second best chess player in the world if you take all formats, and Fabiano is probably number 3. So I have a personal disagreement with the statistics, but I also didn't crunch the numbers. So believe it or not, Nodirbek Abdusattorov is actually the only other player in this field, not named Magnus Carlsen, to be a world rapid chess champion. And yet, having said that, he has a 3% estimated chance of winning the entire thing. For me personally, Nodirbek is a bit of a mystery. He clearly has ice cold water in his veins. He's going to be a fantastic competitor when the pressure is at its highest, but does he have the skill set necessary to adapt to every single player? Does he have the preparation in the openings, in this faster time control than a classical to perform? The stats don't say so. In fact, a handful of these players have a higher chance of winning according to the statistics than Nodirbek. Danny, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Why is he only listed as a 3%?
Yeah, I think mystery is a great way to put it, Levy. He clearly has shown that he is capable of defeating every player in this field. He's beaten Magnus in a classical time control with black. He's beaten him in rapid, I think en route to winning that rapid championship. But with that said, he's one of the less experienced players in the field. He hasn't been 2700 classical for all that long. And recently, he hasn't played badly, but he hasn't shown the same level of brilliance that it would take to win this event. So while 3% is a little bit harsh, I think given some of the other competitors like Hikaru and Magnus, I actually think it's a pretty fair prediction. I think that his objective skill set is quite a bit inferior to players like MVL, Carlsen, Hikaru, even Alireza. So Naroditsky will have to essentially play the tournament of his life. He might even have to show a performance superior to that which won him the World Rapid. And objectively, that's pretty unlikely. I don't associate MVL with 2720. I associate him with 2780, 2800. So he has the capability to win this tournament. There's no question about it. But I don't know, just something tells me that he's just hasn't had enough classical practice, hasn't had enough OTP practice. So I'm a little bit pessimistic about MVL's chances. 7%, I'm not very good with the exact numbers. I think that's the right ballpark, Levy.
Yeah, for me, it's also very difficult to look at Maxime and see a number of 7% to win the entire event. And just like you said, to also see his world ranking. Because Maxime, to me, is 3,000 plus on Chess.com Blitz player. He's a ridiculous rapid and Blitz player. Skill-wise, he's a former World Blitz champion just a couple of years ago. So to see where he's fallen in the world rankings is quite strange. At the same time, we're currently witnessing a changing of the guard in the chess world. Guys like Pragdananda, Vincent Keimer, Nodirbek Abdusaturov, Alireza Firouzja, just to name a few, they have to take their rating from somebody. And they are taking their rating points from guys like Maxime, Hikaru, Fabiano, Dingliren, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Magnus Carlsen. Those guys are still perennial top 5 players. Then you have the perennial top 10. And unfortunately, Maxime has fallen out of that perennial status. So at any given moment, 2800 level Maxime could show up. World Blitz champion Maxime could show up. This could be that tournament. But I do take issue with the fact that he is more than double likely to win this event over a guy like Nodirbek, who's clearly the future generation of the game. So that's where I have my gripes. Not to mention the fact that MVL also has a higher chance to win this thing than Alireza. Like, we could have a whole separate debate about that, but I know that the country of France is going to be rooting heavily for him. His games are going to be covered on Blitzstream's channel, so we'll see how MVL does. France has 2 players to root for in this event, but I don't fancy their chances against guys like Hikaru, Fabiano, or Magnus. Last year in Toronto, Wesley So won the entire event. That event was called the Global Chess Championship. This event is called the Champions Chess Tour Finale. Now, there's a key distinction between last year and this year. Last year, Magnus Carlsen was not present. Also, those games were played on screens. Actually, this year, the players, as we know, are going to be playing on physical chess sets. Now, we actually don't know how Wesley performs in elite rapid tournaments because he hardly ever, if ever, has played a World Rapid Chess Championship. Why? Those dates fall right after Christmas, and during that time, Wesley is at home with his family, which is an entire separate conversation we should have as to why those dates fall on literally the most inconvenient travel dates of the year, but we're not going to do that right now. Wesley So has a 7% chance, according to our metrics, of winning the Champions Chess Tour Finals. I don't know how I feel about that number, simply because Maxime was given the exact same 7%. If we're going to say Maxime gets 7%, I think Wesley's probably more at a 10%. He matches up really well against players. He is generally very, very well prepared. He's probably a top 3 to top 5 rapid chess player in the world, but it is still a mystery to me, Danya, how he's going to perform live over the board against some of the best players in the world, because we don't get to see that very often.
I agree, and I think if we were making these predictions after the Global Chess Champion finals, which Wesley, I almost said which Levy won. You'll win it next time. Which Wesley won. I think I made the same mistake during commentary. I would call you Wesley, and I would call Wesley Levy. So I don't know what that says, but Wesley has been a shadow of his former self for the last year. It's not that he's been blundering a lot. He just hasn't played with any spark. He's making tons of draws. And, he's almost been unrecognizable tournament after tournament. And, the Wesley that won the CGC finals last year and the Wesley that played in the US Championship, for example, are two completely different people. And somehow I just don't see Wesley suddenly reemerging in this tournament. I think 7% is approximately correct. Of course, he might find his form. You never know. But if Wesley continues to play, the kind of sterile chess that he's been showing recently, there's just no way that he's going to defeat Hikaru and Carlsen and, a hungry Alireza Firouzja. I just don't really see it happening, honestly, this year.
This is the most disrespectful statistic I have ever seen in my life. I almost wish the stats team added decimals. Like, is it 0.4% and they just rounded down? Is it maybe 0.8%, but they couldn't round that up because that would be an embellishment of the reality? I mean, I find it so ridiculous that they're saying, like, we Doctor Stranged it. We saw 14,305,000 possibilities, and in none of them does Denis Lazovic win this tournament. Why did he even take the plane here? I mean, I guess, like, does he get a check for getting last place or sixth place? I guess this odds is for winning, right? Now, a better statistic would be, what are his chances of advancing? What are his chances of winning one of the head-to-head matchups? What are his chances of making the quarters, or rather not the quarters, the semifinals, let's say something like that? That's a more interesting debate. But unfortunately, the statistic is to win it, which is really unfair in a field of, let's say, a guy like Magnus Carlsen and then Hikaru, Fabiano, and all the other great players.
Well, it's definitely not ridiculous, because let's reverse engineer the 0%. Imagine if Denis Lazovic wins the CCT finals. That will probably be the greatest underdog story in, like, sports history. It's going to completely surpass, like, the fact that the Miami Heat, as the 8th seed, made the finals last year. It'll be the most outlandish story ever. So if you track that back, yeah, 0% is pretty realistic given who Lazovic has to beat. Now, this is absolutely not a reflection on his talent. He's an incredible player with, at this point, a great track record of success in blitz and rapid time controls. He does well in Title Tuesday. He's defeated Shakir Mamedyarov actually 2 times in a row. So he's amazing. I think in an individual game, he can beat anybody, including Magnus Carlsen. But if you understand what it takes to make the CCT finals, 0% starts to make more sense. It's harsh, but once again, if Lazovic manages to win this tournament, I mean, this will be talked about for years to come.
This one surprised me probably the most, and it's the fact that Hikaru Nakamura has been given a 9% chance, a whopping 9% chance to win the Champions Chess Tour finals. Mostly this is in context of other statistical probabilities. For example, Fabiano Caruana's is 18% likely. Wesley and Maxime are 7% each, which I find to be ridiculous. Hikaru probably deserves at least 5 to 7 percentage points more. I don't know who you take that out of, and when I think Hikaru, I think probably something like 20%. Having said that, in 2022, he failed to win the Global Chess Championship, and that was because of a really odd match against Wesley So, where they just played really solid games non-stop, and then Hikaru ended up losing one. So that's where it gets a bit strange for me. I mean, Hikaru is like the #1 to win or blitz and bullet events, like the Speed Chess Championship. He and Magnus go down to the wire every single time that they play. Why is he only 9%? This is the biggest mystery to me. Can you help me unpack this?
I definitely take issue with the 9%. I think that chess fans should keep in mind that in general, the differences in strength among these players are so incredibly low. And this is what makes predictions so difficult for an event like this. I mean, people always ask me on the street, who do you think is going to win X, Y, and Z? And the margins are incredibly thin. Essentially, any player can beat any other player in a given match. And I think a lot of people don't really understand that. They think of things in these global absolute, oh, Hikaru is going to just crush everybody. But in one individual match, MVL can absolutely beat Hikaru, and so that's why I wouldn't put Hikaru at like 50% and Magnus at 50%. These other players, if they show good form, can absolutely defeat any other player. With that said, I agree. I mean, 9% versus 18% for Fabiano, I take great issue with that. If anything, I would just flip the two. I would put Hikaru at 18% and Fabiano at 9%. I think that would be an easy way to resolve things while keeping the added percentages up to 100. At least I think that's the way math works. Don't really remember 5th grade. But yeah, I think that's an issue. And definitely if you take Hikaru like versus MVL, objectively, I think Hikaru has a much, much higher chance of winning.
Yeah, the weirdest thing for this statistic for me is, isn't Hikaru the favorite in every single matchup except maybe against Magnus?
Exactly.
Like, how is he only 9%? It doesn't make any sense.
He is the heavy favorite against Fabi in a rapid. I mean, this is like the fact that I will cling to. If Hikaru versus Fabi, Hikaru has had his absolute number. He's been crushing Fabi. 20-move game in Isle of Man, wiped the floor with him in SCC. I mean, surely that has to count for something, and don't call me Shirley, but yeah, I mean, that I have the biggest issue with these predictions is maybe the Hikaru Fabi numbers. Even though I'm contradicting myself, Levy, but honestly, when I was talking about Fabi, I forgot to check Hikaru's percentage. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, Hikaru absolutely should be at like 18-20%. So in the case of Magnus, I would almost like draw a parallel to a regular walking into, you know, their favorite restaurant and all of the tables are booked and they don't have a reservation, but because you've been a patron of this restaurant for years and years, a table is always going to be made ready for you. So it almost doesn't matter who else is playing in the tournament, what Magnus's recent results were. If he's in a tournament, he is just the favorite, the heavy favorite by definition. I mean, this is the respect that he's earned over his years of dominance. And 50% is an incredibly high number. Magnus has been upset in a lot of recent tournaments, but I mean, his level of dominance is such that I do think that he's the heavy favorite. And I do think that when Magnus plays with not a lot on the line, and I think in the CCT he's going to be playing freely, he's not as worried anymore about having something to prove. He's won everything there is to win. So in a certain sense, I think there's the least amount of pressure on Magnus. In another sense, he's got the biggest X on his back. Everybody wants to be that player who upsets Magnus in any tournament, but especially on a stage as high as the CCT. So maybe 50% is a little bit over-optimistic, but maybe like 15% of that just comes from the respect that we have to give Magnus because he's Magnus, Levy.
That's true. Magnus could be 75 years of age and go to his favorite restaurant. No, and they'll still have a table. Magnus could play the 2063 edition of this tournament, and he will still have more of a chance than Denis Lazovic. Yeah, guy, the statisticians really poor Dennis. No, but on a serious note, I almost feel 50% is slightly under. Hear me out. They ran the simulation, right? If this event happens 10,000 times, Magnus loses this event 5,000 times? Like, he doesn't win it, he gets second, third. Isn't that almost too many times, right? That's just too many times. So I don't know from who he would absorb the percentage points, but I almost feel like it could be 55 or 60 because, as you said, when Magnus participates, he wins. That's what he does. And he wins Rapid, he wins Blitz. He is the reigning World Rapid and Blitz champion. He's no longer the classical world champion, but everybody knows he's still the best chess player in the world. So I think the odds are pretty fair. I think the rest of the field has to look to upset him and take him out, whether that's going to be early or late. I just hope that we get a Magnus versus Hikaru finale.
We can all agree on that.
Yes, I think we can all agree on that. I think all eyes will be on that. But whoever is in the finals, whether it's Hikaru, whether it's any of the other participants, we do have a very high expectation that Magnus wins the event, but we won't know until the players start moving the little figurines to their little squares.
Thank you, everybody, for watching our predictions. I think what makes this event most exciting is precisely the fact that it's so difficult to make predictions. If it was easy, if we knew exactly who the favorites were, there wouldn't be the same level of hype. I'm so excited to see the battle of the generations, how players like Denis Lazovic, who might not have a big chance to win the whole event, might be able to play spoiler. I'm very, very excited for a potential Carlsen versus Hikaru match. It's going to be an amazing event. The hype And we don't have to manufacture the hype. This is the amazing thing. The hype comes from the chess itself, these amazing matchups. It's going to be an unmissable event.
Me personally, I'm obviously looking forward to seeing some of the best chess players of the world compete, but I'm equally, and if not more excited for the event to actually be in Toronto for the first time, for there to be a fan zone viewing experience. We're all going to sit patiently and wait for a matchup that we all expect and all want and all dream and crave for, Magnus versus Hikaru, but we've got Fabiano, we have MVL, Firouzja, Nodirbek, all these young guys in the mix as well. I apologize if I didn't name any names specifically, but it's a great field in a great city. Daniel, we were there last year. The atmosphere, the buzz in Toronto is electric, and I don't think Toronto, I don't think you could choose a better city to play host to such an event. And then in the second quarter of the next year, we have the Candidates Tournament itself, which is going to be in Toronto. So I'm pumped. I'm really looking forward to this event. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us and listening to our predictions, whether we aligned with yours or you think we're idiots. And we'll see you all there, December 9th through 16th in Toronto.